I just want all of us to look at this year and look back at the last 4 years. That itself will tell you the story of India in the world and story of India even in matters which are domestic affairs. That will also tell the story of India, its states, and also, therefore, India and the role of Karnataka. So I've purposely put these 3 chapters before you. And why are the last 4 years important? I'm going to state everything that everybody knows. Why are they important? These were unusual years. Not any run-of-the-mill year for any country in the world. If they were unusual years only for India, we can always say, unusual, India has had several unusual times, war times, 3-4 wars, drought times, and particularly Karnataka gets hit very badly when droughts happen. So drought times and therefore unusual. Or there has been a health crisis, like sometimes in some cities in India, say about 20 years ago, also you had serious problem of public health like plague in some cities in India. No, none of this. The last few years have been very exceptional, very unusual, not just for India but for the world, because it started off with the COVID, 1920, 20, 21, and not till 22 could you say it has somewhat subsided. Even now there are traces of it. I'm not saying it's gone away completely. And that is the case for every country in the world. COVID-19 did not leave any even small island countries without affecting them somewhat. In some countries the impact has been huge. So, Indian economy suffers, and also every other economy around us suffers. Globally, the economies suffer. When global economy suffers, the impact again, the spillover of that, back again on our economy. So your own economy because of COVID, every other economy because of COVID, and because of that, the impact again on Indian economy. So after that, you get to somewhat trudgingly, you come to 21, 22, let us say. Even from February of 22, you have a war happening in Europe. You may ask, so what? But 2 countries who had a big role in trade, particularly Ukraine for food grains and edible oils, and some military equipments and so on, and somewhat in pharmaceutical as well. And Russia, which gives fuel, which gives fertilizer, which also gives grains, which gives natural gas. So every one of these items in the global market came under severe stress. Sanctions happened. You cannot buy yourself from Russia happened. Ukraine was in no position to send its grown grains outside, and therefore the global grain market gets affected. So it may be a war happening in Europe, but it had global repercussions. The fuel price goes up. Many countries are living in food insecurity situation. And when they live in food insecurity situation, the global market for grains becomes stressed out. And its repercussions, I don't need to say it. So if the COVID pandemic has not gone away completely, war comes in, The global markets for essential, whether it is crude, whether it is edible oil, whether it's grains, whether it is fertilizer, everything which is critical for our economy is hit badly. And then whoever thought this war will stretch, whoever thought this war will be for years, not just months, and it is happening now. And with all this, because of the sanctions and because of the various global developments and the COVID, Western economies, which took a certain formula for dealing with the stressed economy situation, the stressed economy because of the COVID situation, they had a formula or a recipe with which they wanted to attend to their economies. And most of the Western developed economies adopted that method of dealing with the stress in their economy. And that method has now proven hurtful of their economies as an after effect. What was the formula? One feature of the formula was you print currency and distribute it to the people because people need money in their hands during the COVID stress times. People needed help, no doubt. But what kind of help, when, how much? So the methods that they adopted has resulted in huge cash in the economy. As a result, the inflation have shot up the roof. Some countries have seen inflation which they've not seen for 40 years, 30 years. Double digit, where countries were living in 1 or 2% inflation. Their tolerance band is also within 2%. Ours is up to 6%. They've gone to 30, 40 year high in inflation. And today, if you want to bring down inflation, you also have to suck in some of the excess currency which is floating into the economy. That which you brought into the economy during COVID. The sucking in is not happening as fast as it should happen. Interest rates are now being increased by their central banks. So doing business is getting expensive. Taking a loan from a bank is becoming expensive. For a long time, the rate of interest was kept low, was low there. In fact, it's become a phrase that people commonly use. Interest rates have been low for long. Now their problem is inflation is remaining high for long. They're not able to control it. As a result, those economies are in a state of flux. They're probably, some of them, going to enter into a recessionary phase. Recession will cause a lot of, again, spillover all over the world. Their demands will come down. Money becomes expensive for them, so for buying and selling, their demand will have to be lower. If their demand comes down, our exports get affected. So your exports suffer, our exports suffer. Because we depend on a lot of exports going to these developed countries. In all this, India helped its poor, kept them, at least given some grains and protein with some dal given. Some money given, you can always give more, but some money given for emergency expenses for particularly women, senior citizens and so on. And after that, when the economic recovery was happening, the policy support and the way in which MSMEs particularly have been given step by step, so many different hand-holding. Again, they can be more done, but some things were done. Has made Indian economy face the challenge people were brave, they helped one another. I will never fail saying that. They helped them even when doctors and others were struggling in the hospital. Outside, people were helping with medicines and food for even people who were kept in quarantine. So with all that, with the MSMEs being given some kind of help, banks also being careful about ensuring assistance reached, credit reached the right corners, and our farmers doing their maximum best, Indian economy is the fastest growing economy in the world today. And in all this, directly the Prime Minister has monitored vaccination, monitored production of vaccination, monitored how vaccines are being dispensed, taken to doorsteps, and in a phased manner, giving people who are exposed to patients, frontline workers, doctors, and then senior citizens, people with comorbidity, and then further to 18 years and above. And then again, within that, students who were desperately wanting to go abroad to study, who had paid fees, but colleges were not opening up. When they have to go, we have to give them priority. The vaccination was being monitored, and that in consultation and discussion with state governments. It's not as if the Prime Minister thought and he did it. Every time the consultations with the state governments kept happening. And in this phase, the opportunity that the Indian economy gives, even though there were challenges, not to lose heart but carry on with the reforms which are so required in the economy. Reforms to make lives better. Reforms to make system transparent. Reforms to make businesses do it easily, rather than go 10,000 places and give their forms and say, please give me the permit, please give me the license, give me this. And where possible, to make it as deemed as given if it exceeds a certain time. You wait for 15 days, 30 days, as is the case in each of them. And if you don't get it in time, we even made this provision, it can be taken as given. So the reforms opportunity was not lost, because everybody was tied up in the COVID, everybody was tied up in the revival of the economy, everybody was tied up in making sure that they don't get hit by the COVID or by the war. And again in this, even when the fertilizer prices, I told you how the fertilizer things have become stressed because of the war. And when the prices hit 7-8 times more than what we give in India in the market, we still imported them at that 7-8 times higher price, but never passed that burden on the farmers. The farmers were paying the same amount as before, but imported fertilizers are very, very high. The total quantity that we import is very high. And every import without restriction was made and given to the farmers, without they having to bear the burden of increasing cost. So, Indian economy is fast growing. Our entrepreneurs showed their courage, their enterprise. They were able to pull through the crisis. All credit to our 1.4 billion population. Really. The government may support, the government may come forward. We have a very visionary Prime Minister who monitors, as I said, vaccine onwards to the price of imported commodities, and get the fuel from where you should. And where you should means where you can afford to bring it from. Initially, everybody was asking, are you importing from Russia? Are you getting it from Russia? Because it's giving in concession. For me, the question is, we need to get it at an affordable price. My search will be constantly on to see where I can get it at an affordable price for the Indians. And we explained our position. Not that we are answerable as a sovereign country to anybody else except our people. We are answerable to our people. So we made sure that India will get the quantities of fuel required at the affordable price. So I am just giving all this only to say, India today is being observed by the global community for the way in which it steered its own way through the pandemic, through the war and war-related price spillovers. Inflation in India is, if I can say in a very generic, sweeping fashion, inflation in India is today largely imported because of the price of fuel, price of fertilizer. So you're bringing it all in. Your own cost for inflation could be supply side. Tomatoes are not adequately available in the market, or the production of a particular crop is damaged because of flood or unseasonal rains. That inflation India always is aware of. Every government will fight that. We are doing that as well. But today, the pressures on inflation in India are largely because of the imported hikes in prices. So in all this, if Prime Minister Modi has ensured that the people of India will not be put to suffering, and where we can help, extent to which we can help, we will definitely do. In an unusual situation like COVID, yes, there will always be the voice which will say, no, this wasn't all right, it could have been different. Agreed. But was there a template before any one of us to say a certain situation because of a global pandemic, you will handle like this? No. Every day with consultation, we were taking it forward. And therefore, without making my opening remarks too large or too time consuming, India and as Indians, we can be extremely proud that our people have all come together and showed their entrepreneurship, showed their hand-holding one another. And as a result, we are able to come up to this level. And in this, as I said at the very beginning, the 3 chapters which I am presenting before you are the global recognition of India, giving India the high table, a place at the high table, for all these achievements and more. And then within India, the way in which things are being handled, and that in consultation with states. I can tell you about the 2020 year when GST collections had really suffered. That year, by borrowing back to back, in the GST Council, sitting and deciding with the ministers from the states, we had given timely borrowed money, but timely release happened on predictable dates. No state was left without timely disbursal of revenue, of money which was borrowed. So the consultation with the states helped. And after that as well, when the revenue grew, we paid them in advance. Sometimes what I have to pay 2 months afterwards, I paid earlier. I gave 2 installments at one time. Only because states are at the ground, meaning that's where action lies. They are at the coal face, as they say. They need money in their hands. They need to spend. So there was no center is sitting over money. No such a situation. The moment it came, and if it came adequately, we pushed it to the states to say, you take 2 months' worth even within 1 month. So the consultation with the states and recognizing the federal nature of our country has been 100% followed by Prime Minister Modi. He's been a chief minister himself, so he knows what it is to recognize the role of states and give them their due in time. So my second and the third chapter also has enough features which I can elaborate, but for now, for my opening statement, I want to submit that Karnataka and its people are very educated. They are in every walk of life. they quietly contribute to the nation building. There's no hullabaloo about it. The state has its gentle people. I recognize that. And therefore, you have seen also what has happened. The way in which Bengaluru as a city has got itself built with enterprising youth. Today, the policy of the state government is also helping to expand that to other parts of the state, Mangaluru for startups and other places also. The corridor goes to Tumkuru, not just from Chennai to Bengaluru, it goes further there. North Karnataka has received, Kalyana Karnataka has received the due attention of the central government, and every project there has been given due priority. Today is a very important day for Karnataka. We all very respectfully remember the role several centuries ago played by Guru Basavanna. The Basavanna Mandapa, it is the central government which is also working together to build it and refresh it and give it its due recognition. So Karnataka and its role, particularly in the international Sri Anna millets, Karnataka leads the way. The farmers of Kalyan Karnataka have always succeeded in producing several varieties of Sri Anna. And the focus given in the International Year of Millets, I remember coming to the Agricultural University in Raichur and kick-starting this whole thing last year. Awards and also challenges have been given for startups. They're being given support money in crores because we want this strength of Karnataka also to be brought out and recognized duly. So, with all this said, I'll end my opening statement and thanking all of you all for having come here to listen to me.